So we need to refactor the code base so we can reduce technical debt and improve scalability. Right. So what does that actually mean for us? Does that sound familiar? If you've ever watched your colleague's eyes glaze over as you try to explain a technical concept, then this is the video for you. Hi, I'm Sarah from The English Coach, and I help international technical professionals and engineers who are working in the UK to communicate more effectively, confidently and fluently so they can thrive in their career. Now, if you're an engineer or you work in any technical field, you've probably been in the situation at the beginning of this video. You're in a meeting with stakeholders, project managers, clients, or executives, and you need to explain something technical. But the people that you're talking to don't have your technical knowledge or your technical background at all. They don't know all the terminology or how things work. And honestly, they don't need to do their job. They just need to know enough to make decisions to move forward. So today I'm going to talk about a framework that you can use to explain technical concepts to a non-technical audience in a way that's accessible, engaging, and useful for non-technical people. Okay, let me start with a mistake that I see engineers and technical professionals make. They assume that explaining something means they have to explain every detail and somehow show their knowledge and expertise in that area. So they go into detail about the technical specifications, the tolerances, the algorithms, the protocols, and they try to be as accurate and precise as possible because that's what's important in engineering and technical fields. However, the other person who doesn't have that background gets overwhelmed, stops following, and your point is missed or overlooked. You see, when you're speaking to a non-technical audience, accuracy isn't the most important thing. Clarity is just as important, if not more important. You need to give them just enough information to understand what they need to know and to deliver it in a way that makes sense to them. So how do you do this? Well, the first principle is to start with the big picture. So before you explain how something works, explain what it is and why it matters, particularly to them or to the project as a whole. What problem does it solve? What change will it make as a result? This gives them a reason to listen, which is crucial. People pay attention when they understand why it's relevant to them. So start with that why. Think about it. If I say, I'm going to explain API endpoints. If you think, this is technical, it's not really relevant to me, you might switch off. But if I say, I'm going to show you how we can save the team 3 hours a day by connecting these two systems. Suddenly, you're interested. You can see saving time is going to be relevant for most people in the project. Here's another example. Let's imagine you're a structural engineer and you're explaining a structural change to a building to a client. Don't start with, we need to increase the beam length to 450 millimeters to handle the bending moment calculations based on the load distribution. That's meaningless to them. In fact, it's meaningless to me. But instead, start with, we need to make the support beams slightly larger. This means the building will safely handle the extra weight of the equipment that you want to install on the upper floors. And it'll meet all the safety regulations. Not only have you explained it in a clearer way, but you've also told them why they should listen. Now, if they want more detail, you have a foundation that you can build on. They might want more explanation, they might not. But you're starting with the big picture and giving them a reason to listen. Okay, the second principle is to use language that they already know. Now, this sounds obvious, but it's harder than you actually think, because when you're working in any area, using technical terminology becomes automatic. You use it every day with your technical colleagues, they understand what you mean, it's easy. And you stop noticing words a non-technical audience wouldn't necessarily understand. Tolerances, load-bearing capacity. Because these words are part of your everyday technical English vocabulary, but not for a technical audience, even if English is their first language. These words are meaningless to them, or at least unclear. And it's important to know that the way that you speak affects how people receive you or understand you. If you use language that is full of jargon, so jargon is another word for technical vocabulary or words related to a particular field. If you use lots of jargon, you create a distance between you and the listener. If they don't understand that language, they may feel excluded, like they're on the outside looking in on your technical world. When you use clear, accessible language, you create a connection. You bring them into the conversation. And that's so important when you're working on a project and working as a team. So what do? Well, there are two options. First, you could replace your technical language with simpler language. Instead of, we need to improve the thermal efficiency of the system, say, we need to stop the system from losing so much heat. Or option 2, if you absolutely need to use a technical term, maybe because it's important or they will hear it again in some of the documents that you produce, explain it in simple language first. For example, we need to add redundancy to the system. So that means we need to have a backup component that automatically takes over if the main one fails. And a little tip, after you've explained a term, check if they've understood. You can say something like, does that make sense? Or is that clear? Don't rush past it. Give them time to process your explanation of a term. The third principle that you may use in longer explanations is to use analogies. This is when you use a concept that you know they already understand to explain something technical. For example, in my role, I might talk about how building confidence in speaking English is like going to the gym. Confidence isn't something that you already have. You have to keep doing the thing in order to build confidence. Just like when you go to the gym, you have to keep doing the exercises to build the muscle. And when you stop doing those exercises, then you might start to lose the muscle. In the same way, if you don't speak English for some time, then you might start to lose confidence. These analogies are very powerful because they take something unfamiliar and compare it to something familiar. And they help people to visualize, sort of imagine these abstract concepts. And when people can visualize something, they're more likely to understand it and remember it. Let's look at an example from engineering. Let's imagine you're a mechanical engineer and you're trying to explain what a feedback control system is. You could say, well, it's like the thermostat system in your home for your heating. You set a certain level that you want your heating to be. So when the temperature drops below that level, your heating switches on. But when the heating goes above that level, the heating switches off. The system constantly monitors and adjusts to keep things stable. Just a warning here, don't make your analogies too complicated. Keep them simple and relatable, and only use them if you're really explaining something very complicated. And also remember, analogies don't have to be perfect. They're there to help people explain the general idea and to make them memorable, but they don't have to capture every single detail of the process that you're talking about. They just need to know enough that you can have a productive conversation. The fourth principle is about your pace and delivery. In general, you need to slow down and create space for understanding. Your voice is a powerful tool. Your pace, the rhythm, the pauses, all of these affect how well people can process what you say. Now, when you know a topic really well, it's easy to speak very quickly because you're comfortable with the materials. It's something that you do every day. But just remember that your audience may be hearing this for the first time. and they need time to process what you're saying. So deliberately slow down your delivery and add more pauses between key points, key definitions, and your analogies. Give them time to process what you're saying. Silence isn't awkward in these situations. It's actually necessary to give people that space to really follow your explanation and understand what you're saying. You might also use gestures, hand gestures, that actually illustrate what you're talking about. So if we go back to my example of the analogies, when I was talking about heating system, we talked about a level, going below the level, and going above the level. Using gestures that actually add to your explanation can help people with that visualization. And when you're giving an explanation, whether it's just in a meeting or you're giving a whole presentation, invite questions from the people that you're speaking to. Create moments where it's easy for people to speak up and ask questions. And you can say things like, does that make sense so far? Is there anything you'd like me to explain in more detail? Are there any questions before I move on? And remember, when someone asks a question, that's a good thing. You might feel, they didn't understand something, but it actually means they're engaged and they're really trying to understand. They haven't just switched off and glazed over because they have no idea what you're talking about. In fact, they've got enough knowledge that they're able to ask these questions. Take time to explain it clearly and show genuine interest in making sure that they understand. This further adds to that connection, and that's really what we want to do to engage people and involve people in what we're saying. And let me finish with this. When you're explaining a technical concept to a non-technical audience, always remember what your goal is. It's not to turn them into technical experts by giving them all the information. Your goal is to give them the information they need to make decisions, to understand the project status, or to have a more productive conversation with you. That means you need to think carefully beforehand of what they really need to know, and cut out a lot of that unnecessary information. So just to recap the 4 principles. 1, start with the big picture. What do they need to know overall? And give them a reason for listening. 2, use language that makes sense to them. Use language that they already know or explain technical concepts in a simpler way. 3, you could use analogies for more extended and more complicated explanations to make abstract ideas more concrete. And finally, slow down, pause, use gesture where appropriate, and create space for questions. If you can do these 4 things, you'll find that your conversations, your meetings, your presentations with non-technical people will become much easier and more productive. Thanks for watching. If you found this useful, please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video.